how does the mindful dating approach differ from what people who are less successful with dating tend to do?
Well, yeah, I would question like, what is successful dating? Is successful? Yeah.
I guess I'll say like, a person that's able to date and have partners that feel like they're being listened to and that they're, maybe 2 steps ahead in terms of thinking about what their needs are versus people that aren't doing that. And then as a result, like maybe they're not being able to keep around partners as long, or they're constantly in turmoil and tension with the partners that they have.
Got it. Yeah. I think this goes back a little bit to what we were mentioning before about how we worry a lot about what other people think of us, and our attention starts to go on the other person's experience. But when we can show up mindful and we're paying attention to our thoughts, our body sensations, any emotions that are coming up, that helps us to stay on our side of the road. We worry about things that we can control. When we put our worth in the rejection or the acceptance of our date, that can be devastating. And that can really, like, at least for me, it tanks my week. If I get ghosted and I take it personally, it really takes you out of a place of power too, because I used to feel like really desperate. Maybe somebody comes into my life and they're not really checking all my standards. But if I start feeling like they need to choose me, or else that means I'm unlovable, then I start to really put up with things that aren't healthy. I might default into those patterns of behavior that were more so just to control the situation so that I could feel safe. And it really is almost like it is a fight or flight response. When we start to reach out for ways to feel safe in our own little bubble, it's almost like we're feeling like there's a threat, that date almost becomes a threat to us. Like they need to choose me or else I'm not safe. And when we're acting from fight or flight, that first of all, it's not a great way to start out a relationship. Does that mean you'll ever come out of fight or flight? But also, it's not really a great place for us logically to be. We're probably not making decisions that are going to be in our peaceful best interests in the future.
Yeah.
So mindfulness helps to really reconnect you with yourself and just stay in that centered place. It's tough. It's a practice because we're still going to default and things are still going to trigger us. But you can constantly come back and say, I am lovable. I'm okay. I'm just going to take this moment to get back in touch with what it is I'm looking for myself, and try not to worry so much about being good enough for someone else. Just reminding myself that I'm already good enough for me because I say so.
Yeah, I imagine that's also got to be a bit of a, like, putting so much pressure on yourself. It's like you inadvertently are so focused on, okay, what do I got to do? Who do I got to be? What I got to whatever. And you're not really thinking about, again, there's another person that's in this process and they're going to have their own things they're bringing to the table. And how am I going to feel about what they bring to the table? And then, this experience is for them too. So I'm trying to make it all about me, but like, what about the experience that they're having? Like, how can I make it to where I'm not focusing so much on myself, but also focusing on like just us both being here and enjoying the energy and space that we're in the moment, And I think we get too much in our heads trying to worry so much that, like, I used to have the same problem back in the day of like, this has to work. And I don't know if there's any other prospects. So this has to be the thing that works. And I'm going to do all the extras. And it's like half the time they didn't need those extras. And it just felt like more pressure I was putting on them,
Yeah. When we force things like that, to me is a sign that I'm out of my connection. When there's like a craving and like it feels like an urgency that it has to work, that's my sign that I'm triggered and I need to take a pause and say, okay, what feelings are coming up in my body? This is another big part of mindfulness, is just mindfully reconnecting with your physical body, with the sensations. And this goes hand in hand with emotional intelligence too. Did you know, listeners, that every emotion that you might feel also has a physical counterpart in the body? It's going to show up differently for different people. But before I discovered all of this, I really only ever felt one, maybe two emotions: anxiety or rage.
And it was kind of like cousins of each other. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah, and they were intense. And they were so overwhelming that the idea of meditating or like feeling my feelings, I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. Are you crazy? That sounds painful to me. But luckily, with the help of therapy and a lot of books and patience, I realized that there was so many more emotions there than just anxiety and intense anger. There was shame, a lot of shame, guilt, fear, just plain being overwhelmed by stress. And I recognized these subtleties of the emotions because I learned my body sensations.
I'm curious to know, like, for you, what were some of the things you noticed? Like, if you're feeling X emotion, you notice this physical result.
Sure. For example, let's say I'm on a date, and dating is naturally stressful. So we already have that against us. But of course, I'm an introvert as well. And I get really nervous socially with anxiety. When I start to feel that anxiety coming up, what happens physically in my body is that I start to hunch over, my shoulders kind of come down, and my abdomen gets tight. It's almost like I'm subconsciously making a six pack, like out of like my body's like getting ready for the kill, like it's preparing itself for the fight. And my muscles tense up. And what I've trained myself is to say, oh, wow, I can feel that sensation in my body. I'm anxious. And I just give myself a little mantra, you can say. I say, oh, I'm anxious. Let me exhale. I'm safe. So I'll just breathe in, let my shoulders come up, exhale, try to let that tension out, and just remind myself that I'm safe, which is, it definitely does. 10 minutes later on the date, I start to feel my shoulders hunching over again, but then I just take another exhale. Also, when I get angry, my hands clench up. I feel a lot of heat in my face. Sometimes my jaw gets tight. When I'm feeling sad, typical sad, like imagine that you're going to illustrate a animated character and how you would draw that character when you're feeling feelings. That could help you, like maybe this could be like an art therapy thing. Draw a picture of yourself sad and notice what your body looks like and see if that actually happens the next time you're sad. Hunched over, your head's down, like you're ashamed to almost in a way have your head facing up. The whole point of all of this is to build body awareness so that you can learn the emotions language. Because sometimes it's really overwhelming to feel the emotion, but when you can pay attention to the body, it almost gives you a little bit of detachment so that you're like, oh, I am not anxiety. I'm just feeling anxiety right now. And the body helps to confirm that it truly is just a feeling. It's temporary. And you do have control over how you can move through that emotion or further push it away, which is probably just going to make it get worse. I know from personal experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I do wonder if because the guys that watch my show, I do wonder if some of them I've actually been able to coach and talk to and see, and I'll notice just by looking at them, it's like, or they'll send me their online dating pictures like, oh, I'm not getting any matches. And I'll look at their pictures and it's like all their pictures, just the way their bodies are positioned, it's projecting out there like a lack of self-confidence or like not really thinking they can actually get the women they want. And it's like, I'm aware. I don't know if they're actually aware that that's a thing. Cause I don't think we're really taught to think about like, hey, like when you're on these various dates, the person across from you is getting a read on you or feeling about you that you aren't even aware you're putting out there because you're not being mindful of like what your internal feelings and stuff are. You're just trying to go on this date like, I'm going to wing it and do whatever and I'll be fine. And they can see that you're not confident and that you're anxious and that you've probably never been with a lot of people. Like they can tell that just based on how your body is moving on these dates.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the connection between our emotions, behaviors, and thoughts are intrinsic. So if you learn how to manage your emotions a little with this emotional intelligence, it's going to just by default change the way you think and the way you act. There's many different paths to change. Whatever one you can get your foot in the door, start running.
Yeah. It's so true. Your thoughts definitely. I was just thinking back to back in my not so great dating days when I was a horrible dater. And part of it is I had very, very low self-esteem. but I used to have like really bad sinuses and my nose would be stuffy like all the time. And then I started realizing like I'm constantly telling myself toxic thoughts about myself. I need to change that. And so I would say, okay, for every like one negative thing I say about myself, I got to say like 7 positive things. And as I would do that, I would notice that my nose would stop being stuffy. Like every time I started being nice to myself, my sinuses went away. And I was like, how is that a connection? But it was.
I love that. And that's mindfulness right there. Is you trained yourself to listen for the negative thought.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is just like step 1 of a transformation process. If you don't know what to look for or when you're doing something that's not helping you, how can you make a new choice? And if you don't make new choices, you're just going to keep getting what you've always gotten. So if you're unhappy with your dating life, if you feel like you're not getting enough swipes or whatever the issue is, you have control to get a new outcome. It might not be the outcome that you want straight away. It's a refinement process.
Yeah, it takes time.
But it takes awareness too of like, okay, it's all one big experiment. Do different things, get some data, see what feels good, see what doesn't work, and move forward with that attitude. And dating suddenly becomes just an experience. It's not a threat. Dating is an opportunity to improve your entire life. Because if, in my case, learning how to work on handling my anxiety, dealing with my emotions, working on that self-love aspect just to be able to show up for dating at all has rippled into every other area of my life. I'm so much more confident and calm. I used to have, I would give myself migraines out of the stress of a date.
Wow.
And I don't want to jinx myself or anything, but I have the least amount of migraines today than I have had in my life, not just before a date, but before talks or podcasts, things like that.
You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high class man. You a high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man.